We are live, or at least it's telling me we're live. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome, creatives, community, and kind folks out there on RPG with DBJ. This isn't my normal broadcast time, but I'm glad to have someone here. I'm interviewing the founder of SINOPA Publishing and upcoming projects. So I'm not going to preamble too long. Please, sir, introduce yourself, and we will get right on into it.
Yep, I'm Sam Quinton. I founded SINOPA Publishing in 2017, and I'm loving being here. Love the show, DBJ. Just so glad to be able to talk to you again, man.
Oh, it's awesome, man. And now specifically, we are here to kind of talk about your Kickstarter, but I would like you to kind of give us a little bit of a background for yourself and some of the publishing items that you have out there that people might want to pick up, and then we'll come forward in time and come to the Kickstarter. All right.
Cool.
So
I actually started playing RPGs in with any regularity in 1990, and the reason often surprises people. I met a very lovely young woman at the university when I started. And she refused to go out with me if I would not join her D&D group. This is the God's honest truth. And so I learned to play D&D to date the girl I was so interested in. And then she broke up with me. But she was really cool, and I made a lot of good friends, and we had a lot of fun playing together. A few years later, I got to do some play testing, which was kind of neat. I got to play test stuff like the Tri-Stat system, Big Eyes, Small Mouth, few things along those genres, DBZ, and a bunch of other things that were coming out in the early and mid 90s. And then I kind of just stuck to playing at home. And then a few years ago, I got to thinking, with the open game license, I really should start working and creating. I need to take some of the stuff I've got piled up that I've been writing, clean it up, and put it out. And so in 2017, I founded SINOPA Publishing to do that, which is basically to start putting books out. And we released the first book, which was Tale of the Wizard's Eye, which was an adventure for the 5th edition game mechanic. It's been pretty well received. I've learned how to format better since then, because it's one of those things you figure out as you go along a little bit. And then decided to start an adventure series called the Tarot Adventures, which would model every adventure after one of the cards of the major arcana. And so we launched that. I'm so sorry. Someone's deciding to call me in the middle of that, and I thought I had that off. So I will call them back after this interview is done.
Oh, I do that all the time, dude.
Sorry about that. Anyway, so we launched the first one with the Draw Glen follow, which was modeled after the Tower theme, and then Comet over Echo Rock, which is modeled after the Comet card. And then the next one is Death Comes to Glen follow. Apparently someone's not taking a hint, so bear with me just a moment. Sorry about that. Let me turn that off.
Hey, I see you online.
So Death Comes to Glen follow is going to be the next one coming out later this year, which is bring us back to the setting that we've built for it. It's going to be illustrated by Anthony Oyeda, who does some absolutely wonderful work, and we're going to get that out there. We also put out our first actual supplement book, which was the Steel Road, and I believe you've got that too, because I think I sent you the PDF.
Yes, I do.
Which is a different kind of weapon source book. It's not tables and charts and all that kind of stuff. It's one story of this weapon dealer, and then picking out authentic weapons from the different regions of the world he traveled through. And so we did that like a sketchbook. I'm gonna show that off just a little bit.
Yeah.
And we started, of course, in the kind of the cradle of civilization. We started in Africa, and so we had a lot of traditional African weapons like the Konda, which I'm not showing very well.
Yeah, there it is. It's coming through really good.
The Knobkuri, the Akrafena. And what we did was, like I said, we built it like a sketchbook. with the narrative, the stats, the sketch illustrations, and then we did 2 versions of each weapon. One, the regular everyday version, and then one legendary weapon, something that was suitable for you to want to quest after. And I think that's gotten a lot of playtime from a lot of folks, because they had one gentleman, there's a cursed axe in there. I'm not going to spoil too much of it, but one of the gentlemen who backed the campaign, that campaign was out last year, and he still messages me because his players have decided they're going to find this weapon that they've heard so much about, and it's cursed, and it was buried on the plains in Africa, and the guy who did it didn't tell anyone where he did it. And so they've been running around North Africa just digging holes looking for this thing. he's like, when I get bored, I just have him dig down into something and collapse into the Underdark for a while. I'm like, wow.
That's funny.
But they're after that, and then we did Whispers of Persephone.
Well, before you move on to that book, I will say that I really appreciated the fact that you really took the time and went out of your way to make it like almost like a globe-trotting resource book in a way, of this person who's going on a journey to find these different weapons from around the world. So it's decidedly Eurocentric specifically. It's very much a world book, and I really appreciate that it was able to spotlight different cultures from around our own world, and then it's very easy for a GM to pick that up and put that into their fictional world without it all sounding like they all came from the same place, essentially.
Well, thank you. We tried very hard to make things very authentic. Like, each weapon has a little thumbnail of history about it, from actual history, to try and reflect, like the nub curry, which a lot of people don't realize. Yeah, it's the big staff and it's for walking and hiking, but it's also used for hunting for small game, because you throw it, it stuns your prey, and then you kill it, cook it, and eat it. Which is why it has a thrown value for it as well, so it can be used as it's intended. And we used a lot of legends from the regions that we were writing about. So when we passed through the Macedonian Turkey area, we had remnants of these old Roman elements that were still in place, and gladiators, and we addressed a few issues about that, and then we moved up through Dacia in northern Greece and brought out a weapon that has not gotten much play, and I don't think it's been mentioned since first edition AD&D, was the Dacian Falx, and brought that back out. Brought the boar sword in, and then bebopped on into India, and was really, really excited to do India, because when was the last time you opened a D&D book and you had authentic weapons from India? And that was a lot of fun. Had to do a lot of research to make sure that things were being treated respectfully and properly, because several of the weapons that are depicted have religious significance for one sect or order or another. And so we had to be very conscious of that and make sure that we wrote to it in a real way.
Yeah. Now, Harry sure sends in a super chat. I see you, Harry, but he specifically asked, why would anyone search for a cursed weapon? I'm pretty sure it's a pretty simple answer for that one. But could you please answer that if you could?
Apparently, when they learned of this particular weapon, what they saw was a picture on the Kickstarter page, and they're like, we want that. And so they've been trying to search and find out about it, and they've gotten little scraps of it, and they don't really realize. Can I give a spoiler?
Yeah,
The
go right ahead.
on this is terrible. It's not. I don't usually write your run of the mill, everyday, easy to stuff. I usually put in stuff that can really cause you some pain. With this one, it's the weapon type is called an Zapazap, and it's a weapon that is used by a particular tribe in the Sapo, who have a long history of cannibalism, which we didn't shy away from. But the curse on this is that the wielder begins to crave the flesh of those of his own race, and losing this cursed weapon can be very bad for you. Let's just put it like that. And so basically it drives you to cannibalism. It's a horrific, horrific cursed item. And there's a couple other weapons in there that are similar, or not cursed in the same way, but they're definitely ones that you don't necessarily want your long-term character to have. And there's some others that are just really kind of cool, like Poseidon's Trident is in there, which was a tough one to do because of the size changing, and a few legendary weapons from different regions, whether it was from China or Japan or Africa. For example, we have a weapon that in the book belonged to Shaka Zulu.
Yep.
And its abilities are not so much of the cleaving, destroying. It's in leadership. It's in bringing out the best of the people around you and presenting the tribe as a whole as this fearsome body of warriors who will not relent. And it's just one of those things that we got a lot of good feedback from. That's my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, honey. Okay.
That's why I put my drink in the refrigerator.
Okay, baby. I'm on. I'll talk to you in a little bit. Okay. She's only 4, guys, so she's watching cartoons and she's used to me letting her on shows and stuff.
Oh, she's a future role player. I've got
Really
dice.
is.
Why is he saying?
Yeah.
No. Go on. And she's nosy.
Quite all right. Quite all right. Before we go into Whispers of Persephone, I also want to say that I remember reading a comment one time. Someone had a problem with that the weapon from the Zulu Weapon.
The coat from Egypt was another one too that people had a problem with the weight. And the weight was cloned from the weight of an artifact in the Cairo Museum. And so with the Zulu weapon, it was the weight of the spear, and the weight, that particular weight was taken from a museum piece that is I think it's either in the Smithsonian or it's in one of the European museums. But we took the weight from that because it was an authentic weapon of the period, and that's what we used for it. And it is a heavy weapon, because the Zulu spear, actually there are several different ones, and I think that was part of the confusion, because there's a very hefty one that's primarily used as a melee weapon and for short thrown distances, and then there's a longer, flatter, lighter one that's used for long range hurling. We were going with the heavier one, and that was where the conflict on that particular discussion was.
Yeah. Okay, now Whispers of Persephone. This dive on into that one, because it is a tour de force of like necromantic
evil. You could say evil.
Yeah, it's pretty evil, man.
It's evil. I wanted to bring the dark back to the dark arts in D&D. So we have a lot of really strong evil art feel in a lot of other systems right now, but D&D, the necromancy felt kind of light. And so I wrote a bloody little book of necromancy. And we kickstarted it with Christian Martinez doing the art, and put the page art is just blood splattered faux parchment, and we made the art thematic to the book, and we included rituals of sacrifice, because how often when you're playing, even in the old adventures, you have some magician sacrificing someone, and from a clerical standpoint, as an evil cleric, maybe you had some thematic reason to, but then you look at necromancers and cultists and such who were doing that, it didn't make a lot of sense. So I wrote rules for why that works for them, and put it in conjunction with a new necromantic tradition in there as well. And so far it's been pretty well received from the people who picked it up from the Kickstarter. One gentleman in particular, when he pledged, he said, yeah, I get it. It's a book of evil. Yeah, okay, tell me another one. He got the book. He sent me another message. He's like, okay, this is a evil book. I'm like, yes. And, you would get this stuff every once in a while in role-playing, and people confuse gore and guts and blood with being, evil and horrific. But there's, I think, more to that. You have to have some of that psychological understanding of why someone would do something so horrific. And when I asked myself the answer to that question before I wrote this, if you're a wizard, why would you undertake such terrible things? What could you possibly looking for? And the big thing I came up with were either a quest for power or insanity. And being insane and being a wizard don't necessarily need to mesh well together, but a quest for power seems right up that alley. And so that's why I built that along. And we put in, new poisons, new potions, a lot of rituals. Created 2 new types of undead, created a set of magic items for use with undead, some cursed magic items in there too. Wrote about the upper echelons of the order that founded this tradition, put some conflict in there amongst them, cast down the first of the acolytes of death and made his apprentice the one who was causing it, wrote some drama in there, and actually we're making Ild, the apprentice, the main bad guy in Death Comes to Glen follows. She's going to be horrific to confront. It's going to be really bad.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I love the fact that you didn't shy away from it. I understand that to an extent it can be a little bit of there could be some hesitation as a small pub publisher to put out something that could be misconstrued as quite decadent. But I think diving feet first inside, I think really did the book really good for that purpose.
One thing about it is that it was hard to write because if you're not inclined to play that type of character, it makes it very challenging. And I don't usually play villains myself. I mean, when I'm the game master, I usually just say, okay, this is what's going on. I narrate it. If people investigate and they learn more, I give them the more meat and bones and crunchy bits of the motivation behind the characters. And so I had to kind of stay in that mindset while I wrote this. And there were several things from this that were taken from old medieval practices. And I think that's part of where some of the horror in this kind of comes from. Like severing the heads of your enemies to talk to them and interrogate them, capturing a ghost and forcing it to tell you the truth. Different elements in this, drinking the blood of your enemies from their own skulls. We brought that back too, which is, yeah, there you go. Also illustrated. Chased in alchemical silver, the skull of your enemies, drinking the blood from them to enhance your own power. So it's not for the faint of heart. it's not. But there were some surprising favorites from this book from the Kickstarter backers in particular, and those are the main people I've heard from because it just came out in January. It was supposed to come out in December. We had a little bit of a print problem with the font that was used. What turned out it wasn't really legible, and so I had to go back and reformat the whole thing in a different font, which is not as easy as it sounds. But people actually really responded well to a lot of the rituals, and then some of the spellcraft in here. Well, there were some that were surprising favorites, like the what was it? It was the clean hands cantrip. That I was really surprised by because it's a cantrip, and what it does is It cleans the caster's skin, hair, and clothing of blood, sweat, and other bodily fluids. It's a passable substitute for a bath. And there are little, for those of you who don't have this book, there are little comments that are inserted in here from different characters named in the book. And this one, the comment for it is, do not come to dinner with blood on your hands. We've all been working all day. No one wants to be reminded of the blood and viscera waiting to be cleaned up in the laboratory. Kroalish, first acolyte of death, speaking to Ild after teaching her the clean hands cantrip. And it was kind of nifty. A lot of utilitarian stuff in it, and it was once it was done and formatted, it was a real joy to get people's feedback on it. And it's not just written for your villains. If you're playing an evil campaign, this is a pretty valuable resource for your necromancers, particularly. The Stygian necromancer tradition that's outlined in here has some really hefty restrictions on it, so it makes it more balanced in a mechanical aspect, and keeps that thematic element.
Cool. Now, after Whispers of Persephone, oh, by the way, could you reveal the reason behind the title Whispers of Persephone?
Okay, that's a good one, actually.
Yeah.
I think you and I talked about that once upon a time.
Yeah.
Persephone, Bride of Hades, the queen of the underworld, is a transitioning deity in the traditional myth. As her, in the spring and summer, she's about birth and life as she escapes hell. And in fall and in winter, she is this queen of the underworld, death and necromancy. And in this, we have a character who wanted beyond anything else knowledge and power of the arcane. And in his quest, his mad vision that he was pursuing, he went to the underworld and sought knowledge from Hades and Persephone themselves. And Hades permitted Persephone to provide that to him, and she whispered in his ear and broke his soul and shattered his mind. And from that, he learned secrets that he grew in his power along this obscene tradition. And so I named it Whispers of Persephone.
That's awesome. I love how you you get little touchstones from like mythology and different cultures and things like that. Not necessarily word for word translating, you know, a specific myth or a particular culture, but having something that others can attach to gain some kind of like a mental foothold. And so I really appreciate that in your writing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's good to draw, I think, inspiration from our own history, our own myths, our legends, because they remain myths and legends for a reason, because they stand tall in the memory of human history. And I think that if we can identify what holds our fascination there, I think we can write better for the people who are taking the time to read for us. So it's basically me trying to stand on the shoulder of giants. So
that's awesome. All right. So now after Whispers of Persephone, which wasn't very long ago, what else has come out?
47 Furious Tales, my very first comic book. We are finishing up the page art. We've been fulfilling, we fulfilled the first part, which was the digital posters and all that right off the bat. We've been fulfilling the t-shirt stuff these last couple of weeks. Still have a few left to ship. When the last pages are colored and lettered, we'll have the book put together and out it will go. And I'm
going to interrupt you slightly. I'm going to interrupt you because there's a picture behind you on the wall that yeah, right over your shoulder, man.
This is the cover art for 47 Furious Tales. To give you an idea, that's 24 by 36 inches. And so that's the base level art that's going to go on the cover for that. And then all the art was done by Alexia Veldhausen. She's a graduate of the Kubert School. They teach comic art and sequential art, graphic design. Very, very prestigious comic book art school. And she has wonderful, wonderful work. And I hope to eventually have covers for all 12 issues once the series is done, around this little room. I'll just have to rotate that particular spot because that's what everyone can see.
That's
But
awesome, man.
yeah, that's a comic book retelling of the 47 Ronin story, the Aiko incident. And we used anthropomorphic animals, squirrels, foxes, rabbits, rats, monkeys, etc. And took and went into the history, went into the actual narratives that surround some of the retellings of them, tried to extract what was actually agreed upon as historically accurate and what was very likely, turned everyone into animals, and then tried to fill in the big gaps in the puzzle to tell the story. A good example of this is your principal villain in this tale is Kira, who, I don't know, if you don't know the Legend of the 47 Ronin, this is kind of a spoiler. He agitated and insulted and berated Asano Naganori until Asano finally, at one point, Kira crossed the line. No one really knows what Kira said to him, so we had to figure out something in the narrative that would be in book 3 that you'll understand. Now we know why Kira decided Kira had to die. Why Asano decided rather that Kira had to die. And then the Ronin plot their revenge against him. Well, Kira during that time employed a lot of agents and spies to watch the Ronin because he expected that there would be some reciprocity, because Asano was actually very, very well regarded amongst his men. And so it was very unusual, given some of the people he surrounded himself with and the reputation of some of his chief retainers, that none of them committed seppuku. Instead, they became Ronin and outcasts in society. And so Kira, not being an idiot, thought, okay, something's up. And so he enlisted agents to keep tabs on these people. And over time, he became complacent, and that's how they got him. There's a lot of little detail that we're using regarding some of those agents, because it was known that he would employ prostitutes and pay off geisha to gather information on clients in the area, and gave him some political leverage at court. Typical feudal politics, as it were. And this is no exception. And we play on that and use that to fill in those gaps to bring the history more alive in the telling of it.
Wow, that's
Can't
awesome.
wait for you to see it, man. Can't wait for you to see it. I hope you love it.
Now, what rating would you give it? I mean, is it like
It's a
PG?
I would say PG-17 and higher, and the reason being it's
okay.
got a lot of bloodshed. We don't have anything like any real nudity or anything. Hi, Miguel. Some of my buddies are watching them, letting them know.
There's a nice friendly grouping here. There's a number of people that join me in the morning: Azala, Scott, Prue, Harry. Yeah, those guys are always always fun to have in the chat, man. They're brilliant individuals. Yeah, it's been a while for Azala, but I'm glad he's here.
There we go. I had a little bit of a glitch there for a second. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
All right, now I can hear you.
Like, no nudity. Well,
I got animals, no nudity, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, I don't hear anything.
Hey, animals are nude all the time.
Yeah, well, we put hakamas on them and kimonos, and we have a lot of. Don't get me wrong. There's a couple of scenes that are done in silhouette that you can draw your own conclusions from, but there's not like huge anatomical revelations or anything. So we did keep some degree of modesty. But as far as bloodshed goes, we have in the very first book we have decapitations. We have people being killed with swords, spears. We have bandit attack in that. It's very, very violent. And is meant to reflect kind of those extreme outliers that we typically associate with the time period. which obviously couldn't have been an everyday occurrence, or you wouldn't have civilization, you had chaos. But as an outlier, it makes for an interesting way to show the character of those particular characters, and there were some people who were retainers of Asano Naganori. Yoshio, of course, being the leader of the 47 Ronin, his young son Shikara, one of the most famous, Yahei being another, and Yasube. Yahei just really doesn't get enough attention, I think, in the story, because he was an older man. I mean, an old man by any current standards, anyway, in his 70s, and had not been one of these guys who lounged around. He had been an active warrior his entire life, and you don't live to be in your later 70s as a warrior in that time period without being a really bad dude, And so we kind of showed that off a little bit, and not in any type of superhuman way or anything, but just in a meticulous, precise, skillful way. We had a long discussion actually when we were planning the book out concerning how to depict, of all things, a wound from a Yari, so that it would properly reflect, the leaf blade pattern, the spray of the blood behind it on the wall, and all that ridiculous level of detail we didn't really need to talk about, but we spent a lot of time on that to kind of get the feel of it. This is not, we're hacking and waving around. These are precise movements, precise strikes. They are lethal by design, not by accident. And with that, we had a big challenge, because a lot of theatrical fighting people are used to don't reflect that. So you had to really take and look at the actual martial arts of it. You had to look at the actual traditions of it. We did a lot of comparing of my own training experience, but also looking at people who were particularly proficient, pulling videos down from different sword schools and looking at how the weapons behave. It was a lot of fun for me as a writer, and a lot of pain in the butt for Alexia as an artist.
That's awesome. All right, so now 47, the comic, The Tales of the 47 Ronin, is something that came out after Whispers of Persephone. So is this where we come to the compendium?
Yep, the SINOPA Omnibus.
All right.
And it's a collection of the first 6 months of releases to subscribers on my Drip page. And if you don't know what Drip is basically Kickstarter's version of Patreon. It's going to get a big facelift here in a few months because they're basically redoing the site. Actually, we're lucky enough to have a couple of the people who pledged their support there watching this right now. So hi guys, it's good to see you. And so with that, every month I release material for it. They get behind the scenes looks at what's going on. I talk about what we've got coming out, talk about how things are done behind the scenes, like how do you calculate your Kickstarter tiers, how do you figure out where you need to set your goal? How do you figure out where your percentage and margins are, and how do they affect what your total goal is? Because that's not exactly a linear relationship. You have to figure out the business mathematics of it. You have to figure out the minutiae of it, from where I'm getting it printed, how many times I have to ship it, destination fees like taxes and import tariffs, things like that. A good example of that is shipping to the United Arab Emirates, which I discovered to be very difficult, and Saudi Arabia, very difficult. Much easier to ship to South Africa, much easier to ship to Australia, much easier to ship to Singapore. But the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, all three have been very hard to get books in, particularly Whispers of Persephone. Whispers was very, very difficult to get into the UAE. Very, very difficult.
Wow. Now, this this compendium, basically the combined release for each month. Now, normally your would you call them drip subscribers?
Yeah.
Okay. Normally they get this in a digital format as being a member for each month, but you're releasing this in print on demand as well?
Right, and they actually get that whole PDF and print on demand codes just for being drip subscribers anyway, because I want to make sure that they get the best value possible, because it's important. It's done for them, you know. That's who we do it for.
Right.
So
Now, all right. So I was just going to say, let's go into what it entails.
okay.
The idea behind what these rewards are and what someone would get in this Kickstarter. Oh,
Okay.
and by the way, the link to the Kickstarter and to your publishing page is in the notes below the video. So if anyone wants to click on that or what have you, that information is below for the Kickstarter. So
Oh, cool. Thanks.
all right. So please go ahead.
So each month we get either a creature, a companion, a monster, something like that, right? And whereas we're used to getting like, okay, here's a paragraph about this is what this is, and then here's your stat block, and here's your treasure code and everything. I took that and I threw it over my shoulder, and I said, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna give a story first. We're gonna give a narrative. We're gonna tell the tale of this monster or this creature or this person, and we're going to put them into something that we can understand. And we're going to do things that are not usually done, something that people don't see. So we started off in October of 2018 when they first invited me to Drip with a monster. And I went kind of to the thematic for the holiday season in October and went kind of monster movie-esque a little bit and came up with Old Jack. And this is one of the cards that is left from the $5 tier on the Drip page, which we put out, and it gives like little role-playing notes on the back. But they got the whole story of it, and then of course we put in the stats, and then we go ahead and we go beyond that. We put in the story hooks, and we put in the treasure information, and if there's any example dialogue or any example skill tests or stuff like that. So like with Old Jack, for example, if you're investigating the area where he's at, you have example skill tests for what you might find with these particular skill results. And the idea is to give, in that example, a tool for the game master so that they can more readily utilize the book and the resource, but also for the player who has it, because they have a story they can enjoy. They can kind of get a feel for it after this guy's been laid to rest. Come on, baby. And it kind of enjoy the whole thing as more than just a stat block. And then, okay, sorry, my daughter has a wardrobe emergency. Let me go ahead and finish buttoning up her princess dress. There you go, baby. So, love you, honey. Single parent stuff. Normally,
Hey.
I'm all over chasing her around, or she's sitting in my lap while I do this, but.
Oh no, sir! Princesses are the most important thing in the world, man.
But yeah, we take and try and put that in there in an entry along with the full color, full page art, and make it a little more chunky, a little more substantial. And then we went from Old Jack to Dien, the veteran goblin mercenary. And Dien's story is one of mercenary sensibilities, of betrayal, of murder, of living to fight another day. And I'm not going to spoil that too much, but Glen is one of those things where he kind of straddles the line between villain and hireling, because it talks about, hey, this is what he charged this person. This is what he charged this person. This is what he does. This is who he is. And so he's an NPC first and foremost, one that you can have interactions with beyond smashing a goblin. And then we took, for the holidays in December, we took a hard left and we brought out Abuela. We brought out our Puerto Rican grandmother as an elf. And we have our story, and it's this whole thing about this NPC that you can not only have a sense of affection for, but someone who can be useful in a lot of ways, because older people have experienced a lot. And if you were talking about an older elven grandmother, you've got someone who's been around a while. And so you can talk about those old legends because she was probably there when they were formed, you know, and you can get that feedback. And so those example dialogue bits were really fun to write. Funny thing is that story actually, when it went out to the drip subscribers, the feedback I got was they wanted an adventure written about a location that's named in there. So we put it in as a stretch goal for this campaign. It's actually the top stretch goal because it's kind of expensive to make an adventure from whole cloth, but especially if you're using full color art and everything. But if we don't hit it on this, I've got to make it now sometime in the future because everyone wants it. So Bloodfall's Tower. Mark that one. That one's going to be good.
That's cool. Now, one of the things, mind you, this isn't necessarily related to the Kickstarter or whatnot, but people that are both on my channel and follow you are probably, just because of how we communicate with them, probably familiar with the trials and tribulations of being a small publisher.
Yeah.
When it comes to simple things like formatting and finding the proper spacings and getting information on which page, and it becomes like a little bit of a ballet, kind of an art and science at the same time when publishing something. So have you run across that and kind of created your own solutions for that from your beginning publishing work up until now?
Oh yes, definitely. When I started with Tale of Wizard's Eye, the first thing I did was I wanted 12-point font because I wanted it easier to read. And the problem with that was that it blew the page count up a little bit. Now the upside was no one has any trouble reading it. But I then dialed it back down to 10-point font for the draw. Glen didn't like it, so I split the difference and went with 11. And I figured out a few things about that book, particularly on the layout, because I wanted to associate the illustrations to the encounters, because I think that's something that we need to see more of in adventure publication. Is we need the illustrations to go hand in hand a little better. And so I got really fortunate with the Draw, Glen and Comet over Echo Rock to have access to such talented professionals, that we got some really great scenes illustrated for those books. Particularly the Draw, Glen we have a couple of scenes that are just literally describing what's going on right there for you, whether it be your first encounter with the bandits in the woods who are sitting at camp roasting a deer, or if you're out and you run into and afoul of the goblin chieftain and you see him with his helmet on and he's ready to come kill you because you've done interrupted his night. It's one of those things where my chair's squeaking, sorry. It's one of those things where I got really very fortunate. And the same thing carried on to Comet over Echo Rock, where we have these monsters, and not just in the encounters. There's a good example of this is when you're talking to these NPCs who are burying their dead. And that was illustrated by Kelsey Cohen. And she did a really nice job of it. That particular book, I wish I'd done a few things differently because we had a combination of black and white and color art in that, which I thought would work out pretty well because some of it was representing underground and some of it was meant to be more dour, and then the color art was meant to be a little more colorful. It didn't quite play the way I liked it, but I'm still very proud of the book. It's a pretty good adventure, and the art's stunning. I just wish I'd done it all in color.
Okay. Now, your artists, how, in general, like, how did you get in contact with them? How did you find their work? Did you search them out? Did they find you? Are you like a small group of individuals? Like, you only like to work with certain artists? Just kind of explain or give us a little insight into your into the art and how the layout is and how you communicate to your artists what you're looking for.
Well, as far as how I met them, I got very fortunate, because what happened was back in 1999, I founded a comic book store. And then I got divorced and had to sell my comic book store. to a buddy of mine. But I still got to come down and see a lot of people. One of the big things about comic stores, you do a lot to promote the reading in young people. And one of those young people at the time was a young man named James Lee. And James is an artist, and now not only an artist, but a graphic designer, a 3D designer, and he teaches art at the universities and is an adjunct professor. He's an incredibly talented man. And so I say to James, who I've known since 1999, I say, James, I'm going to do this. I would like to get some art done from you. And he said, no. He said, I'm really busy. I'd love to do some stuff with it, though. I really would. Matter of fact, he just sent me a message about that. Hi, James. He told me, he said, but my brother is just graduating from the Kubrick School, and I know he'd love to get some paying gigs. I'm like, all right. So his brother Brian Lee, who did most of the work in Tale of the Wizard's Eye, he created Old Jack's illustration, numerous other pieces for other books. He's like, I like what you're trying to do. I know some people who might be interested who are also at school. And so I got introduced to a lot of really talented artists. The fun part is I thought I knew what I was doing, and I was wrong. And so I learned from a lot of mistakes that were made in those first 3 books, not just between the formatting, but also the business model. Because the thing about writing adventures is you are basically writing for no more than 20% of the role-playing community, right? You're writing for game masters, and then for that percentage of them who like to use it. So you're kind of nerfing down who you're writing for. And so if you're doing that, you have to accept the reality that you're not going to sell as many adventures as you would sell a supplement resource book, like what we have with Steel Road, for example. And so we got through those first 3 books, and everyone, although we didn't really see a lot of money from any of them, everyone liked the work, and everyone seemed to get along with me pretty well. And so I had built, of all things, a closed Facebook group where we could assemble our artists, other writers, and put them together so that they could communicate and share information. And also so that I could put out, hey, this is what I'm wanting to do. Who's interested in working on it? And so that's how Alexia Veldhausen, for example, ended up becoming the artist for 47 Furious Tales. I posted a list of, I think it was 7 different projects I wanted to develop over the next year. She claimed that one. Zach Viola claimed the Steel Road. Christian Martinez wanted Whispers of Persephone, et cetera, et cetera. And by doing that, we got people who were interested in the topic anyway. We were able to negotiate what a flat whole contract cost for the work at hand, which was far more equitable for the artists, so that they can make actual decent money on something, and also really put the business in motion of being in business. And why that's important is a matter of opinion and what your work ethic is. For mine, the important thing is I want to put out the best quality I can, and I want to do that in an ethical way. And in this particular meaning, what I'm referring to is I want to be able to pay the people who are creating for me, my artists in this example. I want to pay them something that's a fair and equitable rate, because we're talking about some of these images take 20 hours to put together, and you go to Fiverr and someone says, well, I live in a small country over here, I can do this for $5. And people have really told me that I was insane not to use that, when I have people here in the United States, they can't work 20 hours for $5, obviously. So you've got to make things equitable for them. And doing that is, I think, very, very important. So we came up with where our price points were, figured out what it would take to get them funded, because honestly, I can't afford just to hash that out of my pocket. And so we used the crowdfunding to basically get the books made, which is what crowdfunding on Kickstarter is for in the first place. Get them paid a fair rate and get it out there. And I have a clear conscience, and I have happy artists. And it was kind of weird because what happened from there was that first group of people then told their friends who were at universities or who were working, and they said, hey, I've been working for this guy doing stuff for his company. They don't have a lot of work right now, but they're crowdfunding stuff to get the money in, and then he pays on time, the checks are good, and we get paid what's agreed on. There's no muss, no fuss. This is what we're doing, this is our contract, we sign it, here's your money, there we are. And it's working out very, very well for us.
I think you are. I think by virtue of doing that, you also bringing more out of the artist, because that's one less thing for them to worry about. You know, if they know that they're going to get paid in a timely fashion and to an agreed upon amount, I'm pretty sure those artists then are far more willing to work with you, or at least to not keep their good stuff on the side. You know, some artists will put their things out, but it's like, that's just my test stuff. But my really good stuff, I'm gonna hold off for, you know, projects that they really feel not just passionate about, but feel trustworthy with the person they're working with. I'm sure that happens quite a bit.
It's been happening a lot lately too. I'm not gonna name the artist, but he and I work together quite often. And we were recently having a video conference about a coming project we're going to be working on. We're going to be working on actually 2 different projects in the next 6 months. But he had a problem with a client that they sent him a check that was no good at all. And so the check came, and the first check wasn't signed, and then the second check came and it was for the wrong amount, and then the third check came and it didn't clear, and you know, the first check was 3 weeks late and the second check was, you know, a month after that, and he's still working to get his money. And I hear about this more and more lately, which is distressing to me, because I mean, I work a full-time job during the day. I do most of my writing at night after my little one goes to sleep, and on the weekends when I can, when I'm not chasing her around. And I think that it's a very simple thing to do, so long as you stay focused on your priorities. So for me, my overall goal is I want to build the company into something where we have an actual office other than the office in my apartment. You know, I want to have something I can hand down to my kids one day. And the only way I know to do that is to build on solid foundations, to have good working relationships, to, you know, earn people's faith, earn people's confidence. And the only way you do that is by working hard. And you can't do that by saying, oh, we pulled $4,000 out of the Kickstarter, let me get $500 because I want a PS4. You can't do that. You can't do that. You need to fulfill your obligations. You need to make it the best you can. You need to get it out there. Now, I was talking to, I get this really great experience because I get to talk to a lot of my backers. We message back and forth. We have a good time with it. And I was talking to one today, and he said, one thing I'm happy about, he's like, I'm happy that I caught you guys when you were just coming out. And he's like, the thing I like is that you're really careful not to overpromise, because when you overpromise people, you know, you underdeliver. He said, but you can do it this kind of way. You say, this is what we're going to do, and then you do it to the best way you can. And he's like, I get these little jewels of content that I like, that I have on my shelf, that I have signed copies, and I sit them there. And when I go to play, he plays with his kids a lot. And he's like, when I go to play with my kids, I'm like, all right, we're going to get down the Steel Road. We're going to put Whispers of Persephone at another shelf higher. And we're gonna go through and play the draw Glen follow today. We're gonna smash some goblins. Here we go. And that was really cool. And folks who tell me, hey, you know, my buddy here, he's a big RPG fan. He's an artist. Would you like to see some of his stuff? And then I get introduced to these great talented people. That's how I got to work with Edwin Abreu Ruiz, who is absolutely an incredible artist. He did a piece called Discovery, which is for the drip subscription stuff. It's in this first omnibus, and it's a wizard's apprentice, and she survived something terrible, and she's looking for a new master. And so if you're playing a wizard and you need an apprentice, it's in the book there, and she tells you her story, and you get to know this character through that.
That is awesome, man. I just I'm by the way, we're both small publishers. I've come to it from a different angle, different point of view, writing, not doing any artwork. By the way, we've been able to
the Environs books are really good.
Yeah. Well, artistically, we've been able to skirt the artist rendition thing because we use a ton of royalty-free material. Gotcha. That's not often used in other publications. We use a lot of landscape, environmental pictures. So there's not a lot of specific pieces that we really need. So we can really modify a ton of essentially coverage photographs. Essentially, is what we use. But so we've been able to dodge that. But
the environment stuff is gorgeous, man.
Yeah. Thanks. Now. That's not me. That's Alex. Alex is our layout guy, and he does that for a living. Other projects, and he does excellent work. We use he kind of uses an oil and watercolor filter on a lot of the artwork to bring out a lot of the color and stuff. So gotcha. Yeah, he does some really great work, and we found out that I'm not trying to promote our stuff here, but
good stuff, guys. Seriously, the Environs books.
Yeah, but he's been able to do some like excellent layouts where he does like double page.
Oh, yeah.
This is like it's like some double page materials, and that's very difficult to do. To get you've got to get the word count right and the things.
I mean that's so much more fancier than the layouts I pull off. But I'm working on it.
Oh, you'll get there, man. It's when you're doing it yourself, it's just a matter of. Sometimes it's trial and error, and sometimes just sitting down and teaching yourself yet one more thing. Like I still haven't taught myself OBS yet, man. I really want to use it for streaming and such. But I wanted to get, if there are any questions in the chat, I really did want. I know they've been talking in the chat, and some of them popped in here and there. But if anyone in the chat had any specific questions or ideas, or wanted to know of some upcoming projects, or maybe they haven't heard of you and they want to know some more information about what you're doing, that'd be good. But one of the questions I do have about this new Kickstarter is, do you plan on making this like an every 6-month Kickstarter? Essentially, so essentially making a both a digital and a print-on-demand format of what your drip / whatever it may be of the future participants are getting first and getting soon.
And there's, like I said, there's that 7th little section of bonus material in there that was put in there that they didn't get because, like I said, I want good value for folks. And that said, they're getting their PDF as a whole unit. They're getting their print-on-demand codes, which is soft cover and hard cover, because it's really not that hard to do. Take you maybe an extra half hour if you're really taking your time with it. In design and haven't done it very often, you can get it done in half an hour for both, get them situated and get them set up and get your codes. It's really easy to do. I don't know why more people don't do it. But there's probably a good reason. I just probably haven't hit on it yet. But it's easy to get them to folks so that if someone likes soft covers, they can get them because they're easier to transport and they're more difficult to damage. Or if hard covers because they fit better on your bookshelf, they look nicer, I think. So there's virtue for both, and so we make both available. But I want to do it every 6 months. I was originally going to do it every year, but there was a weird problem that I discovered with that. The book was too big. So what would happen was, like, this current one with just the 6 months and the little bonus is 52 pages plus whatever we're going to get in from the stretch goals. And so it comes around and you look at it, and all of a sudden, instead of having a small book to print, you've got 100-something page book to print, and that throws your print costs up.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be in a situation where someone's like, okay, we're going to get our print on demand code from drive-through, and it's $18 to get it printed. I didn't want that to happen, So it's a more easier pill for me to swallow if it's like, hey, I got the print on demand code plus the PDF, and it's like $10 to print it or $6 to print it or whatever the target on. And this was like 10, I think, for hardcover, if I remember right. Right now with the current page count, so it's a real easy to manage.
Now I want to make sure that Miguel Santiago, who I'm not familiar with, I think you know the name.
Oh, I know Miguel. Yeah,
he's got
cool.
Right. We're not ignoring his question, but I did want to say that print costs are a thing that is very it can be very difficult to find the monetization of it, because like you're saying, if you do a Kickstarter and your page count increases because of unlocking your the further goals, the book gets bigger, which means it gets heavier for delivery charges,
shipping,
and it gets a greater page count. And then when it gets a greater page count, that means that the printing costs go up. And sometimes, depending on what threshold you break, the printing costs will jump. It's not a linear rise. It'll jump up. Yeah. If they do it, and especially when you start adding in color and unique printing capabilities,
options.
Yeah.
Emboss covers the whole nine things. And see, that's the big thing. So like in this one, we line out where that breakpoint is, because right now, up until the $8,000 mark, it's all just the print on demand. And so it has a very fixed cost all the way through, which is higher than what you would get if you have a press run. And so if you have a press run, you have X amount of copies, you have your setup fee as the primary cost up front, and then that's distributed across however many books you print plus those book costs. And so where you might start out with a cost at like a 500 press run, I just said it twice, I'm sorry. I would say like $6, $7 a book. When you get to like 2,000 copies, that distribution, that setup fee is maybe dropped it down to $5 a book. And you might at 5,000 copies get down to as low as like maybe $460 or $450 or whatever, which as a publisher increases your margin, and it's great. The thing about it is when you start increasing those page counts, like you said, it throws it up. So when you're doing your Kickstarter, you have to account for that in your math, so that if you unlock everything and your page count, instead of being 52 pages like we have here, is 96, then you have to be able to account for that, or you're going to bankrupt yourself.
Yeah. I've heard about those horror stories of being essentially too successful. So Miguel's question is basically talking about the pipeline of work for the remainder of the year and the next one. And what about the Ennies? Yep.
So Miguel has been a fantastic guy. I'm really fortunate to have made his acquaintance. He's a friend, and I enjoy talking to him. And he always asks the best and the hardest questions. So the pipeline of work this year is really packed. So we've got, after fulfillment is done for the omnibus, we've got a comic book anthology where what we had was several of the artists that I work with wanted to get their comics out. And so they put their heads together and said, why don't we ask Sam if he can do that for us as an anthology? And so they threw Nick Capone under the bus and sent him to me. And Nick said, this is what we want to do. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, wait, really? I'm like, yeah. And so we worked it out, kind of a nod and a handshake kind of thing. We sat out and we said, okay, this is how we're going to do it. 6 months later, we had to revisit and say, guys, where's our progress? And then we had to put on a little more groundwork so that we could actually navigate it and get it done. Because if you're familiar with that idea of a project, there's been like one successful that I can think of in like the last 4 years. So I had to put the framework in place to get it done systemically. After the anthology, we've got Death Comes to Glen follow. Should hopefully be not only to the playtest, but out of playtest. So we can make sure that I didn't make it too deadly, which has happened before, which is why we playtest. We get out of playtest with that and get that to Kickstarter and hopefully get that funded. And then we've got the second omnibus should be coming on the heels of that. And then also we should see our Santa Dragon Claws for 2019, which is our holiday magic items book, which will probably be launched on Kickstarter by Zach Viola. I'm going to write and publish it, but trying to get him very comfortable with creating, with being able to fulfill it so that he can build his own brand as well. Because when you only create success together, and so we try to make sure that everyone's being as successful as possible. My own RPG, 8 Lands of Adventure, I got really, really lucky with this. I somehow managed to communicate at one point a few years ago with Stephen Michael Seshi, who is the creator of Talislanta and Atlantis. And Steve Seshi told me that I was okay to use his action table as part of my mechanic for it. And so I've taken that, and it's basically a part of a larger table. In fact, instead of one column, it's 2. I won't go into too much. It's easy to resolve. I've looked at the math every way I know how. And so once I finish the write-ups, I think I'm finally going to be ready to go play test. That particular one is going to go to the Drip subscribers and play test, as well as the playtest teams that I've set up in another group for the playtesters. But that's the other thing the Drip guys get. They get all the playtest documents. So they get that right off the bat, too. As soon as it's ready to go, like, here you go, guys, have fun. And we did that with Whispers of Persephone was where we first did that. And, yeah, it was – I remember some of the comments I got were like, oh, my God, we got to get this knife. We got to get this knife. I'm like, well, you kind of have to get the knife, because if you don't have the knife, you're going to be stuck at second level for a while. And so it was some interesting stories that came out of that about, what happens when you're the evil guy and you let the rest of the party know, and then the rogue in the party decides to steal your knife. Because you're being too evil. Repent, says the rogue, repent. Yeah, we got that, and then Pitchforks and Peasants, which is designed to be like a 0 level player character experience where you are playing to build your character, and you're having these little micro adventures where you might get lost in the woods, or you might actually run afoul of an actual goblin monster when you're 0 level and have to hope to survive. With a few new magic stuffs in there, some folk magic in there too as well, some kind of cool stuff. And the antithesis of Whispers of Persephone, the Diary of a Monster Hunter Exorcist. But I think one of the things that Miguel is particularly excited about, because just as Whispers was for necromancy, I've got books planned for Enchantment Charm, and then one for Evocation. And the Evocation book, we've already settled on design for the cover, which is going to be made to look like it is pinned together out of dragon scales. So we're going to get that illustration. I think the best comparison of that is, since getting that made in like plastics or papers would be prohibitive, we'll do it like an illustration. So Whispers of Persephone has 2 different covers, and this is a good way to think about this. Whispers, the flesh cover, the spine of the book is a spine. And so with this Evocation book, we'd have the ridge of the dragon down the spine of the book, and then the scales and stuff off the front and the back, which I think is going to be pretty nifty. It's going to actually be very hard to letter to make it visible. We're going to have to make some really bright letters. I might take and see if I can get the artist to do the lettering like they're on fire, so that it looks like the tome is burning, as far as lettering goes. But that poses certain print challenges, so we'll see what we can do. And then for the Eenies, I got hit over the head with the Nerf hammer a little bit, with the Nerf bat. People were saying, what about the Eenies? You need to go and submit for the Eenies, do for the Eenies. And so I said, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. And so submitting to the Eenies, I didn't want to just send electronic versions, but sending 6 copies of every book is a little cost prohibitive, and my backers came up and said, we got this. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys are the best in the world. And so thanks to them, we were able to send copies to the Gen Con teams. Okay, honey, go eat them. I'll be down in a few minutes. Send the copies to the Gen Con judges, and so we are submitted for any awards for Comet over Echo Rock, which was released within the time frame to qualify, for the Steel Road, for weapons and supplements, for Whispers of Persephone, and then for Santa Dragon Claws 2018. So we got 4 books in consideration for the Enies this year. I'd like to make the final cut for something. I would like to be able to go to Gen Con and see if I actually won something. That would be kind of cool.
That's awesome, man.
And different people say different things. Some people say, well, it's going to be Comet. And then some people say, no, it's going to be Whispers because it's the weirdest thing out there. And then some people say, no, it's going to be the Steel Road. And then other folks say, well, no, it's going to be Santa Dragon Claws because it's like the cutest thing no one's done before. And I'm like, all right, well, I try to do stuff that's new and unique. So we do a lot of story-driven stuff, a lot of narrative, and then add the stuff in. So to my thinking, it's kind of like, what if you were reading Lord of the Rings, and every time you read about something that was enchanted, you had your stats right there.
Yeah. I love that, man. All right, so and you did talk about the future. It sounds to me like you're always like you're not doing one project at a time, that you have staggered projects going on at the same time.
Yes.
So you're beginning the writing of one thing, in the middle of writing something else, play testing something else, finishing the layout on one other thing. So how do you keep that in? Like, do you have trouble keeping that in order, or?
No. Professionally, I'm trained as a paralegal, so juggling assignments is part of the gig. Well, I'm trained for other fields too. My current profession, I work for the courts, and I actually teach for the courts now. But I was trained at the university this last time I went for paralegal science, and so budgeting your time is a key thing. Now, I will tell you that what messes that up is when you find that something doesn't work. So when you have to go back and do revisions, that will eat up your time. With me, I sacrifice a lot of sleep for it. It's just the way it is. Like one of the things I've been working on a lot lately, I meant to have it done 2 weeks ago, but we had a lot of things that happened. And it's the regional map for the Glen follow area, which is that setting neutral location where the tarot adventures originate from. Because I wanted to do something cool, and then I couldn't figure out how to make it as cool as I wanted it. So I wanted to have a big 3 feet by 2 feet big canvas map or big cloth map like what you used to get. And I couldn't find someplace to do it in the way I wanted it with the level of confidence I had to have. And so what we're doing instead is we're taking that 2 foot by 3 foot map and getting it illustrated by an artist. Okay, honey, I'll be out in a minute. And we're putting it on big, high quality posters so that people can get their regional map for players and then one for the DM. And so it's something that you can have in your kit and roll out on the table, or you can hang it on your wall and have it there. And it's proving to be an interesting task because I can't draw. And so I'm having to lay it out for my artists so that everything can be to where it needs to be, which requires putting the scale in. And cartography has never been my strong suit. So it's proving to be a little bit of a challenge. But we got a really great cartographic artist, Tanya Gomez, who lives in Portugal, actually. Was referred very highly by some other creators, which is how I came in contact with her. And got her deposit paid and get the rest of it paid on delivery. And hopefully we'll have it end of this month or in June. And have it in time to go ahead and launch the Tarot Adventures Book 3 campaign once everything else is done and looking good and looking pretty and fun to use. Because it has to look good. It can't look anything else. It has to be nice.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with us us publishers. It's like, oh, it's gotta be just right, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? There's a certain level of perfection, and I'm sure it's something that frustrates sometimes frustrates the people that are working with us. Like, no, let it go, get your hands off of it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, and the other thing too is it slows us down. You know,
Yeah,
when you have to come back and just put the polish on it, and you find something below the surface that needs to be reworked a little bit, and you sit there and you say to yourself, I can leave that here, or I can make it right, and then you go and you make it right. And I don't know, it's one of those things where it kind of slows you down, but I think in the long run, it's worth it.
All right. Well, we've of course we, as usual, we passed the hour mark.
Sorry about that.
Oh, don't be. I claim I talk for an hour, but it usually goes hour 15, hour 20 sometimes on my own channel. So yeah, we just get to talking and then start reminiscing and bringing up all kinds of other things. But I will let you go. You do have a princess who would like to be attended to.
She's hanging out in my door right now, listening to us.
Yes. So I'm going to let you go, sir. Please take us out. Point the way towards anything and everything, especially this Kickstarter, and then we will say goodbye.
Outstanding. So, guys, if you want to check it out, the Kickstarter is called the SINOPA Omnibus Volume 1. It is under the SINOPA Publishing Company account. It's the debut Kickstarter under that account because I realized I had to have something that was tied to the business so I can hand it down to the kids one day. And you can get PDF for as low as $4. PDF and print-on-demand code for $8. We have some really cool posters, some really cool T-shirts, some really nifty stuff, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Also, there's a link on that page to my drip page. If you want to subscribe there, the PDF is released on the second Sunday of every month, which means we've got one going out this month. And actually, I can show this off, I think. This is this is a test print of the poster that's offered, the really, really big poster that's offered. And I think I just turned this upside down. I sure did. And so what we have here is a Japanese spider demon woman, a Jaragoma. And that is going to be this month's release for our drip subscribers. So you'll get that now.
What are you doing?
Yeah, honey. Hi. And so check it out if you like it. Monthly subscription is $3 for PDF, or for our $5 subscribers, they get the little thank you postcard along with it, which has the image of the monthly monster. Hey, baby. And then little role-playing notes on the back so that you can have those for reference. And your players can handle them. You can handle them as a player. Hi, honey. You want to say bye to everybody?
What are they saying?
They're saying bye to you, honey, because we're saying bye-bye. I want to thank DBJ for having me on again, man. I swear it's like sitting next to Johnny Carson and being on the night show in the good old days of everything, you know. And no, don't sing a song, honey. No. You can sing a song to Granny later. But I really do like being on here. Thank you so much for having me. So guys, I hope we'll see. If you have any questions, you can just shoot them to me on the drip or on the Kickstarter campaign. Hit me up on Facebook. Easy to find. Post your questions. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
All right. Guys, by the way, support the Kickstarter. Also, go back, get Steel Road and Whispers of Persephone, two of my favorite. Go back, check out everything that's been that's in the publishing line. And guys, everybody, have a great evening and support small publishers like ourselves. All right. Have a good evening.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, DBJ.
You got it.